So this one is probably going to ruffle some feathers. Just saying. But honestly, that's what we do here at What's on Your Plate podcast. We have conversations that challenge us, make us ask ourselves some hard questions, and if we're brave enough, sometimes we can be truthful enough in our answers that we ignite inspiration and change. I'm Sarah, your host, and today we are talking about divorce. That's right, I said it, the D word. We're going to hear from a coach who specializes in helping people find alignment during the end of a relationship so they can break free of the stigmas and begin their new chapter reinvigorated and in peace. All right, let's listen in. I am here with Tracey Gramenz, certified life coach with specialized training in divorce therapies, helping you create peace and alignments, focusing on beginnings when it feels like everything's coming to an end. I'm so excited that you're here. This is something so many of us need to talk about, and nobody ever does.
Absolutely. I was actually just talking with my banker about it today. He was getting ready to go to his wedding and he was like, "And what do you do?" And I was like, "Well, I'm a divorce coach." And
A
I
little
was like,
awkward.
"It sounds," but I said that, I go, in the beginning of your wedding, it sounds weird to say to talk about my profession, but it's actually a really good thing because it's all about alignment. So the beginning of a marriage, the beginning of a new chapter in your life, it's just about alignment. It doesn't have to be the stigmatized thing.
For sure, for sure. Um, Was that a little awkward for you though? Like, or for him maybe more than you to like this guy's about to walk off to his wedding day and you're like, by the way, I'm a divorce coach. Like, here's
No,
my card in case you
I,
need me. No,
yeah,
I'm kidding.
I, I actually, I am very sarcastic, and I stopped myself from saying that joke because I was like, "I'll talk to you in 5 to 7 years," but
Oh my
I did not say
gosh.
that. No, no, I think because I did frame it like, he's beginning a new chapter of his life, and I'm just working with people that are also beginning new
Yeah,
chapters. So it's just a similar thing, actually. So, no, I didn't feel awkward.
well, that's great. Yeah, no, and in a lot of ways it is a similar thing because divorce is truly a new beginning, right? I mean, it might not feel like that in the moment, um, but truly that's what it is. I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I feel like I want you to help us understand just how this started for you. I feel like we hear a lot about coaches and programs and therapies and things and just different people that are helping others move along a path. But divorce coaching, I
Mm.
feel like, is not heard as much. So tell us how this all started for you.
Yeah. So I think most of us are drawn to working in an area that where we've gone through something really hard. We like to turn our pain into purpose. And so, like most of us that have gone through divorce, I went through a hard divorce. Most people think of their divorces as really hard. Um,
Mhm.
I remember sitting with my lawyer at the time, and there was just barrages of emails and all sorts of things being thrown my way. And she just stopped and looked at me and she was like, "I deal with a lot of, people, a lot of women going through divorce, but this is really bad. And how are you not a shell of yourself?" And the question kind of caught me off guard, like, oh, first I felt like, oh no, is this so bad? This is like comparatively like harder than others. But it got me to thinking about how important it is to stay aligned in my mindset and just stay focused on where I'm going and not kind of the battle in front of me. I was like, like I'm a mountain biker too, and they always say look to where you want to go. If you're looking at the route or you're looking at the rock, then you're surely going to crash on the root or crash on the rock. So I think that that's kind of what got me through that divorce time, was like, look to where you want to go. Stay focused, and I did that. And as I came out the other side, women just started coming to me. I mean, without even me asking, people would just try to meet up with me and ask for support. And I realized I felt like that was just needed to be part of my path. I felt really drawn to saying yes when people asked for help, and really drawn to elevating all of us as we go through this hard season of life and reframing it into something that is an opportunity for growth rather than the stigma culture has traditionally put on it.
I love that you identified how important it was for you to say yes to those people asking for assistance.
Yeah.
Um, I think it could have been really easy to just, no, it's not my business, or, oh, I really, only know my situation. I can't help you with yours, kind of thing, and just kind of shy away from that. But when you feel your heart being called to do something and to show up like that, it's just important to listen to it. And I'm so glad that you did, because I think there's an absolute need for what you're doing and how you're showing up for your clients, helping them just find that alignment and find their anchors in their journeys. And I'd love for you to talk more about that. I know a lot of what you do is not so much from like a counseling type of standpoint, but like helping people kind of find their alignment and that grounding within themselves.
Yeah, one of the things I do in the beginning of working with women is identify values. And I think most of us think we know what our values are, but it's really important to one, revisit them when you're going through a life transition. Part of maybe what got you there is that your values had changed, or maybe your partner's values had changed, or you felt like you couldn't live in accordance with your values. And so, one of the first things we do is talk about what are your values as a person. And then in this season, how do you want those values to play out? And so we do that so that anytime we start getting off course, we can stop and say, hey, is this in alignment with my values? I had a client come to me a few weeks ago who was getting a lot of stuff thrown her way. And she was like, oh my gosh, like, my ex is kind of bringing up this thing from my past, and it's really hard for me to hear about. And I think I it's unfair of him. I think I maybe should like fight him, like maybe I should go after him because this is traumatizing for me. And I was like, well, you can do whatever you want, right? We can all do whatever we want, but is that in alignment with where you're going right now, or is that just a distraction? And she thought about it, and she's like, oh yeah, it is a distraction, and he's trying to distract me. And so instead of maybe doing a countersuit, we ended up writing one sentence in response to what he threw her way. We said that this is not relevant to the situation. And that was the entire response, because she was aligned. She knew what her goal was and her focus was. And so we're able to just completely drop the rope, right? We are not going to get involved in that.
That just probably empowered her so much, and to not feed into the emotion that would have just been overflowing in such a toxic way had she immersed herself in bringing all of that just agitation to the surface of that response that could have been had it not been for your help. It reminds me of how, as a business owner or entrepreneur, you think about, or even from a personal standpoint, you think about maybe the top three things that are most important to you in the coming quarter or the coming year. And when any time there is something put in front of you that you need to decide to either bring on or include or participate in, it's like, look at those three things that you said were most important to you, right?
Mhm.
If they don't somehow assist or somehow bring those ideas to life or help facilitate that, then don't do it. Just don't even engage and
Right.
participate.
Absolutely. Yeah, you have to have that filter system in place so that okay, I have this much time in my day, and if this isn't working toward a goal, then I'm just not going to do it. And it's a really great accelerator when we live like that because we can more quickly get to our goals. And like you said, this is just in general. And then when you're doing that during the divorce process, you save yourself a lot of time and money and heartache, first of all. And then you get to where you want to be in a more straightforward way.
For sure. I can see how obvious that would be having a conversation like this. If you're in the moment and it's just a heated situation and you're all in emotionally in the turmoil that is divorce, how do you help people just bring themselves back down from heightened situations of just what can really get out of hand?
Well, just like the values, we also in the beginning talk about strategies.
Mm,
And so there's several strategies, no matter who you're dealing with, that work. And some of them are, probably things we're all familiar with, but to say them out loud, like say less, right? So we work on keeping communication um, brief, informative, friendly, firm, like that. Just get to the point. I will help clients edit emails and I'll be like, let's take those 3 paragraphs and turn it into 3 sentences. Let's take those 3 sentences and turn it into 3 words, right? Keep it focused. And then we also do things like strategies for how to communicate. So, spreading out your communication, giving yourself a cutoff point. I don't respond to texts after 8 p.m. I don't receive notifications on the weekends. Whatever it is, I respond to emails on Fridays. Those are very hard in the moment. I know you've gone through divorce. I
mhm.
like all of us who've gone through divorces. We can say these things, but then in the moment, you want to, you know, get in there. So we have these strategies, and then we also bounce the strategies off of our values and use that to put our ego in check. So anytime we're kind of deviating from the strategies that we know work, we stop and we think, is this in alignment with my values? And is this my ego speaking? And when you do that, it helps you live out the strategies and stay in alignment. But it takes work. It is not, and it takes time. It takes time because you need time for like things to get diffused and to learn this new way of being, learn this new evolved way of communicating.
For sure. And that way of communicating, I think, is so important because I know, speaking from my own divorce experience, there was not an understanding that by the time you get to the point of sifting through what's left of like the relationship through divorce, the emotion part should never even really enter the equation, right? Because
Yeah,
by that time, you're saying, you're not working on anything with that person anymore, especially if there's not children involved.
right.
Um, so it should be very straightforward in terms of the responses. The emotion should be out, the ego should be out. But as humans,
Yeah,
wanting that last word, right? Um,
yeah.
do
We
you
so
find do you find that most of your clients are seeking you out? Do you find that you even have to promote yourself very much?
Um, when I meet someone who is in this season of life and we have a conversation, then it usually becomes really clear that this support is helpful and needed and um, very aligned with what they need in their life. And I think that we're doing things differently now as women, as a society. And so when women see that there's someone who can walk alongside them, that's not
Mhm.
their family, that's not their lawyer, that's not their best friend who's still happily married, or their best friend who's, divorced and bitter, or whatever the option is. And they see that there's someone who can just help keep them on track. It's a yes, right? This is
For
just
sure.
so
Well, and I asked that because to me, it would make so much sense to just have it be a no-brainer to include somebody like you in part of that process. And maybe because I know what it's like not to have somebody in the process, but you made a good point a moment ago too about not relying on your friends and your family to assist you along the way in this because they are very much emotionally attached to you.
Yeah. I think the thing I see a lot, and I've experienced, I don't know about you, but or the people listening to this, but um I work with a lot of people who have really high conflict divorces. You can call the partners narcissistic or whatever word, it doesn't really matter, but doesn't matter the word or the label of the other person they're dealing with. But what does matter is that I often work with people where regular strategies don't work. So your family is really well intended and they're full of shoulds. Well, he should this should be like that. But the frustrating thing for those of us going through divorces with people like this is they play outside the rules, right? We're recording this on an election day. A lot of
Mhm.
people's ex-partners turn into or are very similar to certain politician, right? Where they just play on their own rules. And so you can go forward with your regular strategy that would work with a boss, a coworker, a friend, but it doesn't work with these people. And so you need a different strategy, and your family doesn't know that. And it can become heartbreaking for them to try to help you and for you to kind of. I remember for me personally, I would get so frustrated with my family because I would agree with them. Of course, it it shouldn't be like this, but it is like this, and there's no law, there's no there's nothing put in place to prevent this person from acting like this, and
Yeah.
the time and money and energy spent to go through a court process to change it
Yeah.
would drain my money, it would drain my time, right? It's
Yes.
they don't understand that, you know.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Um, yeah, I really connect with a lot of what you just shared there. And unfortunately, divorce is something that is very common in our society. So we see it a lot with those that we love and care about too. And
Yeah.
because that's true, everybody has an opinion, everybody has their input and, things they want to share about their own experiences. But when it is so very emotionally driven, it's just not helpful.
Yeah. No, it's not. And again, I mean, I think that it puts the emotional weight on you to then you're going through this hard thing, one of the top stressors in life, going through divorce. And and you're dealing with this person who you most likely used to love, maybe still have like love or care for them. But now you're in this potentially this battle with them.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're trying to mitigate that. You're trying to probably move or, start a different job. Like there's so many things up in the air. And then your family, who's well meaning, coming at you, telling you things should be better. And then you have to like manage them and talk them down when they're getting so angry on your behalf. It's a
Yeah.
lot of emotional output. And quite frankly, you have to just stay so laser focused on where you're going that you have to kind
Mm-hmm.
of cut that out. And that's also what I help people do. Like put like put your blinders on and stay focused. And sometimes that means not cutting your family out, but maybe saying, hey, we need to put some boundaries around how we're going to talk about this because these conversations are too emotionally taxing for me with you,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Yes. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense too. Gosh, there's so much I could just elaborate on in that way, but the conversation is not about my experiences for sure.
But
So,
it sounds like it's kind of landing for you or you're remembering things.
well, for sure, for sure. But I want to hear you talk about the alignment work you do. I feel like with your guidance during the process with your clients, they come out on the other end of this situation with a lot of realizations about just doing life in general.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's why it's so exciting, because you think we're talking about divorce, but actually what we're talking about is moving forward in the next chapter of your life,
Hmm.
reinvigorated, excited, well, feeling at peace, right? Like that is so foundational. And I think a lot of us who have been in tumultuous relationships or ones that have ended, we kind of forget what peace feels like. And that's something I say all the time. I want to help women remember what peace feels like. And it sounds simple to say it. And I like tear up just thinking about it, because I remember my own journey toward that. And I remember, I think we talked about this before, but I remember waking up. I had moved out of our family home. I moved into the home I'm in now. And I remember waking up one of the first mornings, and my kids weren't there. And that's always hard, if you're going through divorce with kids. That's a whole nother, thing to move through, is seeing your kids in a different structure. But I wasn't thinking, my kids aren't here, I miss them so much. I just remember feeling like, in that fogginess of waking up, thinking like, oh, I feel like there's something exciting that's happening today. Like that feeling you get when you wake up and it's a birthday or you're going to a concert. And I remember thinking like, okay, is there anything happening today? And I was like, no, there's nothing happening. And I was like, well, what is this feeling? And it just hit me like a ton of bricks. I'm like, oh, I just feel peaceful. This excitement is actually just peace. And it was just so delicious. And I just laid there relishing in it. And it became this focal point of my whole year. Like for me, that was one of my core values. And that's how I developed the system that I have with working with women, is like, develop what for you is your core value. For me, that first year was peace. Everything ricochets off that. If this doesn't bring me closer to peace, it's out, right? This event, this person, this thing, gone. And it's it's so exciting, because then when you know what it feels like, and you're not waking up with dread, you're not having to like, what is this vacation going to look like with this partner, what's this morning going to look like with this partner, all of that, the energy.
Yes.
When you get to the other side, and you know what I'm talking about, when you get to
Yes.
the other side, you will never go back. You will not. Or if you do get back there, you are going to be aware of it.
Hmm.
You are going to be aware of it, and you're going to be able to identify it, and
Right.
you're going to be able to act differently than you did in the past.
For sure. There's so much that you don't know until you know.
Yes.
And I say that because I feel like, especially if you married very young,
Mhm.
there's so much you don't know who the hell you are, depending on the situation. And there's so much you don't know about what you actually want until you know what you don't want.
It's so true. And I think also a layer on top of that too is the idea of what you want, the idea of marriage. I grew up very Christian, and there's a lot of beautiful gifts about love and community that I hold dearly, from that. And also there's a lot of layers on top of that of just cultural garbage. And one of them was definitely like this idea of like, your partner is just going to be like your everything. Strangely, I remember like thinking, getting really excited about budgeting together. Like, we're going to have a joint bank account and just like be on the same page with money for some. I don't know why that was like sold as sexy in the church, or that was my interpretation. You couldn't pay me $1 million to share a bank account with a man right now anyway, right? Like, no, but I had these ideas of what it should be like. And so this is a kind of different topic, but I think that part of a sub conflict for me, apart from being in a misaligned marriage, being just with the wrong person, I just had all these crazy ideas about what marriage was. And I started getting angry that my marriage wasn't like that. but really it wasn't what I wanted. It was culture put on top of me.
Right.
Yeah.
There's so much of that. I mean, we could have a whole nother conversation about just those cultural, societal expectations of what marriage or even just committed relationships should look like, right? But those ingrainings, that programming at a young age often sets us up to find ourselves in positions that we don't want to be in. And it's not actually what we want for ourselves, right? And we don't find that out till there's a little more growth that happens and you find yourself in a situation that you don't want to be in anymore.
Right.
That maybe you wouldn't have you had you waited it out or something. But I think too, where what I will say about that is when inevitably those types of relationships typically end, there's so much shame and guilt
Yeah.
and so much fear of judgment because this is what you said you wanted
Yeah.
and now you don't.
Yeah. And I think absolutely. And also, I remember having a period of like mistrust of myself and fear and shame of bringing another partner in because I messed up so bad the last time.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I've now been in a very healthy, very happy partnership for last 4 years. And I think for like the first year I didn't talk about it because I was like, I want to decide on my own if what this person means to me. And I don't, but I think also I was like, I don't want to get judged. I don't want my family or my friends to say one thing about this person and have me be like, oh, yeah, you're right, because I can't trust myself. So for me, kind of like keeping it a little bit more private, kind of in a way was like me learning to trust myself again and me deciding, oh, I like this. Oh, this works for me. And now I could care less what anyone has to say about it because it's my life and I know I feel at peace with this person. I feel happy. I feel, I just feel the things that I want to feel, And I used to think I this maybe the excitement or like the 6 months, the first 6 months of a relationship, like forever. You want the person who's like the charismatic and like I don't know, all the feelings all the time. And I'm like, actually, I'm going to remember that peace feeling. And that's the feeling I like the most in a relationship, peacefulness.
For sure. Like if you go through that falling in love phase and then you land in love and it's even better,
Yeah.
and there's not like the disappointment, I guess, of, hey, remember when you used to do this or do that?
Oh,
Or,
yeah.
that I feel like is that piece you're talking about where it's just like maybe that initial excitement has been gone through already, but then it's still this continuation of just what feels good and aligned and peaceful to you. And that's, I feel like maybe when you know.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. But I think that that's kind of going back to what you're talking about with the shame and fear and guilt. All there's so many things. Like I always think about it like a weed and then the roots. And there's all these weeds, right? Shame, fear, guilt, and it's just the surface, right? But really, what's underneath it? That's the work I'm interested in. Those are the conversations I'm interested in having with women. Like let's take off all the external stuff because shame is just covering up something deep and important. So let's figure out what that is and then let's work on that, right? I don't We don't need to talk about this shame and fear and anger. That will naturally go away when we deal with the root causes.
Absolutely. That is just very on point what you said right there. Thank you for sharing that and just putting emphasis on how important it is to get below that surface of things.
Yeah, I think that we can stay in like the guilt, the fear, when and almost not even notice it because it's so normal. It's so normal, especially
Mhm.
for women,
Right.
right? Especially for women. And so we almost it's almost like when we do things out of guilt as a mom, it's almost like badge of honor or normalized or championed. And that just takes us farther away from ourselves.
Hmm. Another thing that I feel like takes us farther away from ourselves, you said something there that sparked this thought is um, glamorizing just sticking with it,
Oh,
even
yeah.
if you're unhappy.
Yeah. You maybe have heard this quote by Glennon Doyle, but she says, a broken marriage is not one that ends. A broken marriage is one where a woman has to break herself to stay in it.
Yes, I've heard it and I agree.
Yeah. And that is the conversation we're having now. That's where we're at as women. We are the pioneers. We are changing the conversation around what success is. We're changing
Hmm.
the conversation of what a good relationship is. And we're taking control because guess what? We can earn more money now. We can stay at home with our kids. We can go to work. We have places to go if there's abuse. We have more resources and we have each other and this community of conversation. And the reason why we're talking now and why we continue to have these conversations is because we are the pioneers. We are changing the narrative.
Right,
We're no longer we're no longer breaking ourselves to to adhere to a cultural norm. We are saying, no, I won't do that. I won't do that.
for sure. And how appropriate just to be speaking about this on what is being recorded on election day. Um, yeah, there's so much to say about that, but something I want to go back to that you spoke about a second ago was there's so much that we have now that we didn't before. And that is so true when you think about it wasn't until the 1960s that women could actually have those separate bank accounts.
Right. Right.
That wasn't that long ago.
No, that was, within our parents' lifetime, there was a time when women who are still living now could not have their own bank account.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, now something I deal with a lot is mortgages and men being I mean, I personally dealt with this where my ex-husband we were both on the title of our home, only he was on the mortgage. I had to refinance everything into my own name. Some women have assumable mortgages where they can just buy out their partner. Some don't. There's still a lot of financial entanglement that we're getting ourselves out of. We're not out of it, but I do believe that we are changing it, and I know that we're shifting how things will be done for our daughters and our sons.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. Every time we make any kind of decisions or forward progress, it is hopefully with the intention of not it just being for us, but our children and what they're going to have to deal with at a certain time in their lives.
Yeah. Yeah, we're changing. I mean, we're elevating everyone, right? We're making it
Mm-hmm.
so that we're liberation. There's just so many facets to it, right? Like there's the one-on-one conversation about alignment and focus, but then there's also all these systems around us, financial systems, power systems, and those are bigger conversations and things that are shifting as we all shift, right? Like there's no
Mm-hmm.
such thing as one way liberation. Like we're all coming up. We're all rising up. And so for me, know I have to just focus on the woman in front of me, on myself, on women who are in this situation, and trust that everyone else is doing work as well to change financial systems, to change those structures.
For sure. Stacey, what are some of the things that you did for yourself in the early part of your divorce journey that helped you find your own alignment and dig into the roots of yourself?
Um,
Because
I
you
think
didn't have a you, right?
Yeah, I didn't have a me. But I had me. So I spent a lot of time with myself. So something that was really hard for me was, the shift of time with my kids. I went from being with my kids all the time. They were elementary school at the time and actually pre-K, and then not having them. So I kind of naturally found myself gravitating toward a few rituals. So one was I would clean my house the day that they left. And I'd put away their toys, everything, because I just it was kind of hard to see all their stuff and like feel sad those early days.
Yeah.
Um, and also I just wanted a clean slate and a calm home for myself. And then I would take myself down to the water. I live in Seattle, so we are lucky enough to have the Puget Sound all around us and Olympic Mountains. And I would go down to the water and watch the sunset. And I'm very social, but I would always do this by myself. I would
Mm.
go down and just look. If I needed to cry, I could cry. But you really, what I remember most about that time was just like remember, like thinking deeply about how beautiful it was. And so, like, my second pillar for me after finding peace was really reconnecting with beauty and prioritizing that in my life, whether it was a clean house or taking in nature. So I just got quieter and stiller and and did that. So I mean, I'm a really big fan of doing simple, tangible things that everyone has access to. I always tell my kids, the sunset's free. Everyone has access to it, you know,
I
but
love that.
like shifting the note, shifting my focus.
I love that so much. And it seems like you've always maybe been the type of person that knew stillness and that calm, just quiet was something that was really helpful in terms of your own healing. I feel like a lot of people just do and go and commit and say yes as a way to just kind of forget about everything that's going on or not worry about it till later. And you sat with it. And I think that
Yeah.
that is huge.
I think you get over it faster. You know, I was taught by my therapist and talked to my clients about micro grieving, which is that concept of allowing an emotion to come through you wholly and completely, just like for those of us who have given birth, just like a contraction, and really feel it. And if you have had contractions, you know, they only last 20 seconds to a minute, right? Like they're not long, but they're intense.
Mhm.
And so when I was in the acute stage of grieving the loss of my family, just the transition, sometimes I would just crumple down um, and just sob and just fully let myself do it. And and then let it pass. And then I wouldn't linger like, oh, I'm sad now. Now I'm going to be sad for half an hour or the rest of the day or whatever. I would just keep packing my stuff or keep doing whatever I was doing, but let myself fully feel it in that like micro grieving moment. And I really strongly believe and know that that helps you more completely move through feeling and get to the other side because there is another side.
For sure. And seeing that in the moment is sometimes really hard, right? When you're in the thick of it, that there is that other side.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, you don't think there is.
right. But I feel like more often than not, if you are coming from a relationship that is misaligned, um, things are so much better on the other side.
Yeah, and I mean it's so interesting. We can both sit here and say that,
Hmm.
but it's when you're in the moment and you don't it's so hard to hear that. And to be honest, I mean I don't work with people who are not yet sure they're going to leave. Um because I just think it's too hard. You don't believe it. You don't believe it's going to be better and you stay. Um and so I mean can just repeat it's it's better on the other side. I read another quote recently that said the only thing scary than starting over at 37, 42, whatever age you're at is never having knowing that you're not living in peace,
Hmm.
knowing that you don't have peace. And I do an exercise with women where we're like, okay, let's play a game. Like, stop right now. Imagine your life exactly as it is. Um, and like, you know, you have your day, you lived your day. Imagine if you live that same day or your life was exactly as it is now in 5 years. And if you're still married and you have like a gut, like you feel kind of sick, like you're going to throw up, that is a good indication that either you need to really seriously consider if you can change something, or if you're dealing with recurring patterns that can't be changed, you have to decide, am I okay with this being the pattern of my life?
That is very powerful. That is a very purposeful and intentional exercise. And I feel like a lot of us should be sitting with that for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Stacey, do you believe in general in the institution of marriage?
Um, what a great question. Um, I mean, I guess I would just say for myself personally, I don't see myself getting married again. Um, but I also think that there's a lot of beauty and goodness in that kind of connection. I think there's a lot of ways that you can have that commitment and connection without marriage. Um, And so, I mean, kind of my unfiltered answer is like, I'm like, I don't know why anyone gets married. But but then like my filtered and my more nuanced answer is like, yeah, I think that there's purpose in making that formal declaration of togetherness, of working on goals together, working on all the elements, your kids, finances, investments. I think that there's some excitement to that. And I don't know if it's just because I had such a hard time, or if I'm just naturally a little more independent. Um, but I'm not like, a super huge advocate for marriage.
Well, I think that's fair. I mean,
I'm an advocate for people liking each other and spending time together and being committed to each other. And I'm an advocate for there being less barriers should you need to change that. And unfortunately for women, if anything shifts and it goes south, there's just a lot of barriers for us to get out of a marriage versus, a partnership.
for sure. And I think something that you touched on in what you just said is really important too about um, the system's making it hard to change your mind, right? And I think that, there's something to be said to a certain degree about not giving up too soon or, trying to work through something that feels hard. But going back to what you shared with the exercise of that 5 year in mind type of mentality, could you continue to do this even a year from now? Can you do this next month? Can you, um, I think that you should listen to your inner knowing about that instead of just trying to say that you'll endure something that you don't love just for the sake of a commitment.
My brother said something to me when I was still married and when I was still receiving advice from my family. Well, I just had to not receive it for a little bit. But he was like, Tracy, he's like, I hear you going through this stuff. And he's like, I just need to tell you that I wish people would stop saying that marriage is hard, because there's this idea of marriage is hard, so that kind of almost enables you getting into a bad situation because you just think, and I thought, oh, marriages are just hard. So it makes sense that this is hard for me because marriage is hard. Because like I wish people would stop saying marriage is hard. Marriage requires work or commitment, partnership. It requires work, but it shouldn't feel hard. Let's say with the exception of like when your kids are 0 to 3 or whatever, then it's just really hard. But it requires work. Partnerships require work, but I don't that's another thing that we're doing as pioneers, as women. We're saying we're not going to just say as a given marriage is just hard and you should suffer through it. We don't do that anymore.
Yeah. And I love that we can just say that we don't do that anymore. And also, I feel like um, I would say marriage can be hard, but it depends on what the hard thing is. Like there's different types of hard. There's the right kind of hard and there's the bad kind of hard. Choose your hard kind of thing. But also, the other thing that comes to mind is the idea that you will be the same at 20 or 25 or 30 that you will be at 35 or 40 or 50. The
Yeah.
idea that you're going to stay the same person. And if you have an immense amount of growth and change and transformation, but your partner or spouse doesn't,
Yeah.
and that feels very limiting to you in your own journey, that too, I think, is something that shouldn't have to just be endured, you know? Um, and I think people do change and they do evolve. And that's why one of my questions for you was, do you believe in the institution of marriage? Because who you are the day you get married is probably, hopefully, if you're working on yourself and growth and progression and who you are, is probably a lot different in 10, 20, 30, 40 years down the road. And that doesn't mean it can't work out, but it does pose some challenges, I feel like.
Yeah, and if you really know yourself well when you get married and your partner does as well, and you continue to grow in similar ways, then what a beautiful thing. I think a lifelong partnership is it's so rare and so beautiful when aligned.
Right.
But then if it's not, then let's again put on the shelf this idea that the success of a marriage is defined by its longevity, right? I think a success of a partnership for me is defined by are are you being elevated and are you elevating the other person? And and again, do you feel at peace? Are you able to go after your goals in a better way? And now having experienced both sides of things, both where I was the person who was, I would say, holding my partner back in my marriage, I know that he didn't feel supported by me, and the feeling was mutual. And now I know what it feels like on the other side. And it's so calm and lovely to just have someone that as a given supports your goals and is cheering you on, and
Hmm.
where I feel the same. It's a great thing.
Yeah, absolutely. One way that I've heard it defined before, everybody has a light that is very bright inside of themselves. And when you are in a partnership with somebody who continuously keeps that light glowing bright and makes it brighter, that is a beautiful, beautiful thing. Some of those, long-term marriages that we talk about where they're just in alignment for 40, 50 plus years. But when you're in a relationship where over time that inner light is getting dimmed more and more all the time, and even getting in danger of being snuffed out, that is when you know that you need to leave so it doesn't just extinguish completely.
Right. Right. And that's why, like we were talking about to begin with, this time is so rich. Like the soil is fertilized and rich and ready for growth because you've already done the hard work of figuring out what you don't want.
Mm-hmm.
It's that. And that, for me, they say that it took years. They say the average time, amount of time someone takes to leave their partner, 7 times when you think about it, kind of think about it, stay away for 2 nights, whatever. um you've done work, you've done
Yeah.
an insane amount of work to get there, and so you are ready because you've checked all the things off of what you don't want, you don't want, you don't want. Now we get to talk about what you do want. how do you want how do you want to spend your time? What lights you up? And guess what, also, there's no one else to blame. You can't, oh, well, my ex won't let me, or our schedules, or da da da. Guess what? Now you are fully responsible and in charge of your money, your time, your health, your friendships. And so you get to take full accountability and responsibility for that, and use it to accelerate, just explode.
Yeah. Do you think some people are afraid of that responsibility?
100%. And that's why they stay as a finger pointer. Oh, it's my partner, it's them. And I think that keeps people from making a change 100%. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's easier to kind of like stay in the status quo than to jump off and see if your wings are ready to fly,
for
you know,
sure.
and trust yourself. And that's the other thing is every woman I work with is in this season of intensely trusting themselves. They're learning maybe for the first time what it feels like to trust themselves. And oh my gosh, we all are boundless, amazing humans. And when we try to be someone else or live someone else's story, that's when we go down, right? But when we are fully ourselves, right? What is that quote? Like the world needs people that are fully alive, right? They need people that are fully themselves. That's what the world needs. We don't need a doctor of this. We need you, Sarah. We need Tracey. We need our kids be fully them. And so divorce is often a time when people, for the women for the first time, are like, oh, this is fully me, this is just me, I love me, I like myself so much, I'm capable of so much, I'm amazing, look at me dealing with all these things that I didn't think I could before, and then that success
For sure.
builds. And oh my gosh, you are creating and living this life that you're so proud of, you're so happy about, you know, you can go to bed, peacefully at night.
Yeah. I just so love everything that you just shared there. And I can see the excitement in you when you're talking about that for yourself, but also the way that you help other women find that. And
Yeah.
um, tell me a little bit more about what that is. How do you help people find that? What does it look like when you're working with a client? And um, is it a one-on-one type of coaching? Do you offer programs? Tell us what it is.
Yeah, so it's really individualized and it is really one-on-one. Because all of our situations are so unique and yet they kind of follow a similar blueprint or roadmap. So I have things available to everyone, right? We talk about so basically, when I work with people, I set a timeline of 6 months to work together, and we have one-on-one sessions throughout that. And in the very beginning, we kind of co-create a roadmap for you. Some people, everyone has something different they need to really focus on. When you have kids, most of the women I work with have kids in the picture. So really figuring out like the logistics. So logistics we talk about, um, kids, money, the logistics of divorce, and then we have the emotional alignment side. So when we first work together or come together, we set out like, what does success look like for you in 6 months? Your life isn't going to be the same as it is today. What does that look like? Right. And then we go into the work of creating that. Okay. Defining your values, talking about strategies to get through now, and then all the other things that come up. And again, that's highly individualized for different people. The thing that I kind of secretly delight in a lot is I also do email support. And so a huge thing I do is helping people still with navigating the communication with their ex-partners. And so I read a lot of emails from a lot of partners, and it's almost, I always joke, I'm like, it's almost like they're handed like this like handbook, like say this insane thing, or insult your ex-partner in this way, and demean them in this way, and they just do the same thing again and again. And so we just work through that. We filter out, is there anything true in this? Usually no, but maybe there's something like, oh yeah, I could work on this. So what's yours to hold? What is just being thrown at you? And I do a lot of pattern identification. Hey, and remind people, this is a pattern. This is a pattern. This is not you. Your ex is doing a thing that I've seen countless people do. And yeah, so I just kind of just help people find the alignment, find the values, and then kind of like the training wheels of the first few months of like, how do you put that into like a real lived experience? You know, how do you play that out? Because I'm very pragmatic. I'm emotional, but my mind and the way I go about things is very pragmatic and system oriented.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for that kind of snapshot of what it looks like to have you on someone's team or on their side during the very difficult time of ending a relationship.
Yeah.
If you were to leave some words of what you wanted people to leave this conversation thinking about today, what would they be?
I would say to everyone, and myself included, that you matter. And for all we know, we just get this one life. And so this time matters too. And we are no longer people who put things off. We work to make our days count and put into them what we want. And we're in charge of it. And I think the most important thing to say is we are capable of so much more than we know. So trust yourself. Trust that you are. If there is even an inkling of a feeling towards something, that is a seed that will grow into a huge cedar tree. Trust nature. These seeds turn into huge things all the time. So trust that a seed in you can grow the life that you want it.
That's just so powerful. Thank you for saying that. I know it's going to really hit home with a lot of our listeners. And let's not end this conversation before you share how we can find you outside of this conversation.
Oh, yeah. So my name is Tracey Gramenz. My website is traceygramenz.com, Tracey with the EY. And you can mainly find me there and book a time to talk with me. That's kind of the best way to do it.
And of course, all of those, all the ways to stay connected will be clickable in the show notes so people can easily just navigate to where you are. And just to read a little affirmation from somebody that you have already worked with. Tracey's coaching has truly been one of the jewels of my life. The results are incredible, and my progress has been destined by her crystalline insights. That is powerful. That is something that is amazing. And clearly, what you are doing is powerful and needed, and absolutely something that more people need to acquire on their journeys. Thank you so much for what you do.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. Thanks for holding the space for this conversation. It's so important.
I know that this one can be a very heavy topic for many people, heated even. Did it make you uncomfortable? What came up for you in listening to Tracey and I talk about divorce and all the stigmas, struggles, and even celebrations that can come with it? Shame, guilt, maybe fear or judgment? Sit with it and consider where it's coming from and why. And remember, all Tracey and I are doing is promoting peace. We're not advocating for your divorce or for the end of your long-term relationships. But take a closer look and remember there is nothing glamorous about staying in a relationship for the long haul at the price of your happiness. My favorite takeaway from this episode was success in marriage is not defined by the longevity of it, but by its alignment of the people within it. Click on the links in the show notes to stay connected with Tracey and reach out to her if you need some support. Such an amazing opportunity to have someone unbiased in your corner, helping you along to your new beginning. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast too, and rate it. Leave a review if your platform allows it, and for sure, share it. Thanks for your support, friends. I'll see you again soon.